$4, save your receipt, say I bought 2 already. So, you understand?
Yeah.
They'll just deduct the $14, you only pay $4 more and you get an upgrade for the whole car.
Okay.
You know?
Thank you.
Don't buy another $7 ticket.
Yeah, I know.
There are some safety rules. For your own safety, please remain seated with your hands and feet inside the vehicle. Please avoid eating, drinking, or smoking during Parents, keep an eye on the children. Kids, keep an eye on those grown-ups. You know how wild they can get. Following these simple rules will ensure we have a great expedition. What animals might we see?
With our eyes peeled, we might see Mongolian wild horses that live on the rolling steppes. Yeah. Tropical forest in India.
Wait, no. Wait, is it the B2 right there in the left?
All right, folks, finish finding your seats if you haven't already. And as they say at the MTA, stand clear of the closing doors, please. Good afternoon, Bronx Zoo explorers. Welcome aboard the Wild Asia Monorail. My name is Steve. I'm going to be your guide and your driver today. I'm going to introduce you all to animals from China to Nepal, India to Cambodia, once we cross the Bronx River. For your safety, please remain seated the entire ride with your hands and feet inside the vehicle. As we turn this corner, imagine yourself traveling 7,000 miles, arriving on the continent of Asia, being greeted by our flock of peafowl. Now these beautiful, beautiful birds are sexually dimorphic, which means the males and the females look completely different. As you can see, our male peacocks are currently presenting their plumage to the female peahens. Those are the ones with those green necks and brown feathers. If they're selected, they'll be making pea chicks come the summer. When one animal of a specific gender showcases that they are a viable partner to have healthy offspring with and are chosen by the females, This is called sexual selection. Sexual selection is a tool and ritual used to perpetuate a healthy organism or species. Now this meadow is called Kaha Meadow. Within it, you would also find alongside those peafowl a number of deer species. Based on their routines, from my observations, I'll predict that our entire deer herd is situated at the back end of this enclosure, which means we're not going to see them for a few minutes. As we round this corner, we are going to meet the Mongolian wild horse. Their other name is the Shavatsky horse. The Bronx Zoo has had a herd of Shavatsky horses here since 1902. So all the individuals you're going to meet today are direct descendants of the original herd. And we got some good news to share. 2 weeks ago, we had a new foal born. So let's see if we can spot the little guy amongst his family. Here they are. Looks like our kid is taking a bit of a midday nap. When they're not running around beside their mother, they are napping and building stamina back up. Mother just tapped him on the shoulder to say, hey, say hi to the monorail. Make sure you are aware that there is a giant machine barreling towards you. What's amazing is that within 24 hours, that baby horse was able to not only stand on all four of its legs, but follow their mother around. By day 3, they are able to run, leap, and jump and kick. Obviously, that costs stamina, and they need to nap as much as they run around in order to build up their strength. Now, breeding them here has been an incredibly important mission for us, because by 1960, 40 years after we received our original herd, these animals went extinct in the wild. Over the last few decades, since the 60s, we have been able to collaborate with zoos all across North America and Asia and build the captive bred populations to a high enough point where we have begun to reintroduce them back into the wilds of the Mongolian steppe and northern China. They're far more acclimated to hilly and rocky terrain because, if you didn't notice, they have shorter legs and a stockier frame than most domesticated horses. This is intentional. They're far more adapted to this type of landscape as opposed to the flat surfaces that most domesticated horses call home. Lastly, the leader of this herd is a stallion. He plays the role of the patriarch. He looks after the well-being of the herd. What does that look like? He'll lead his mares from pasture to pasture, ensuring they have the best opportunities to graze, but he also fathers all the foals. So in this meadow, we have an example of a patriarchal herd structure. The next meadow is home to an example of a matriarchal herd structure. This means that the leader of the next group of animals is a mature female, a mother/grandmother, the matriarch. Now, if you can see through the tree line, you can already spot a number of our animals. These are the largest species of wild cattle ever. These guys are the Indian gaur, the actual mascot of Red Bull. Because the Red Bull actually is not a European bull on the can of Red Bull. It's one of these Indian gaur. They do not have wings. That's a good observation. Now they are gigantic, standing 6 feet tall, 10 feet long, and weighing between 2,000 to 3,000 pounds each. Their size keeps predators literally off their backs. These guys can shake an attack off from a full-grown tiger. When they are not in survival mode, they are grazing. They also play fight and lock horns in order to test each other's strengths. It's a way of bonding. But also they tend to all mosey on into the center of this meadow and just sit down together. I call it a gaur cuddle puddle. Now, like I said, this herd's led by the matriarch. Her job is to act as the herd's memory bank. Through her lived experience, as well as what she learned passed down from her own elders, she would in the wild be able to recall the safest paths to the best meadows, ensuring the herd's well-being. Now keep your ears open, guys. We're going to hear a different type of jungle quite soon. That rumbling that you're beginning to hear, at least in the first half of the train, is the traffic barreling down the Bronx River Parkway directly behind you. The noise that creates can be considered invasive. It's not in these animals' codes to recognize the sounds of motor engines or traffic. So, we erected this wooden fence in front of you in order to dampen the noise pollution that ricochets down the parkway. And this gives our animals a naturally sounding environment, with no external stimuli to jolt them or make them uncomfortable. Because right now I don't hear a thing. And this is ideal because we want to encourage their natural born instincts. And dealing with the sounds of traffic is just not in their Rolodex. Now I love that you guys spotted him already. Through the tree line here, that orange blob is Anakin. Anakin is a Siberian tiger. Now this is the last enclosure I want anyone to fall into, so please remain seated. As we roll up on Anakin, we'll be able to get a really good view of him. And as I talk about him, you can get your photos. I mean, I love this guy. And frankly, this is, he does us a favor by not sitting in any of these bushes. He's fine being out in the open. They're solitary by nature, so no other tigers will be bothering him today. And he rotates this enclosure alongside a tigress named Suhana. And we do this intentionally. We want to encourage behavioral enrichment. We wanted them to communicate like they normally would in the wild. So what does that look like? So Anakin has the enclosure today. So when he's not taking cat naps, he's wandering around the perimeter of the enclosure, marking the trees with his claws, creating unique scratch marks. Also, he will spray his scent on anything he can get the scent on. And this is how he would communicate with other tigers in the wild, that they are entering the boundaries of his territory, and if they don't want to fight to the death over resources, they best move on. When Suhana gets run of this enclosure, she looks for Anakin's scratch marks and his scent, and will leave her own. And this is what I would call behavioral enrichment, setting up routines. Yeah, you too, buddy. Setting up routines that allow them to act like how they normally would in the wild. Now this rude guy is one of our peafowl, the male peacock. Outside of exposing his plumage to the hens, he calls out all day, every day, this time of year especially. Now remember guys, this is actually the back end of the first meadow that we entered to start our tour. And just as I predicted, we have in front of you one of our axis deer males. Towards the back, we have our black buck antelope herd. And through the tree line here, all hanging out in what seems to be a nice big puddle, these are more access deer and the Barasinga. Now all these deer would be on Anakin's menu in the wild. Not here, of course. We don't do stuff like that here. But in the wild, if Anakin were to catch one of these deer, he would gorge and consume up to 40 pounds of meat in one sitting. That's the equivalent of any one of you having 160 hamburgers at once for dinner. Now, in the bamboo thicket is another animal on Anakin's menu. This is the babirusa, a wild hog. They like to camouflage within the mud and rocks. There's one right down here. We may not be able to get a good look at him for much, but our females are towards the back here. Look at these little cute girls. They're prey animals, so to feel secure, they like to spend time within foliage, rocks, and mud. So they could be hard to spot if you were not able to see them. Right in front of us here is Happy. Happy is a mature female Asian elephant. Hey Happy, how you doing, girl? I can tell it's Happy. Happy does not have hair on her tail. She puts hay on her back, but not as much as her herdmate Patty. And she rotates this enclosure with her on a daily basis. These are golden girls, mature females, so they need a little bit of me time. Now if you noticed her trunk, The human body only has about 650 something muscles in total. An elephant's trunk possesses 40,000 muscles. Yeah. Now, she's also about 10,000 pounds. She has to eat 200 pounds of grass and hay a day and drink 60 gallons of water to maintain her curves. Luckily, that nose can suck up water up to 2 gallons and then shoot it right back into her mouth. 2 gallons she can hold in her nose. Imagine that. Now, where she's standing is where, on a weekly basis, she gets pedicures and baths from her keepers. We do this intentionally to build trust between keeper and animal, but also to help her associate new guests and all the new sights and sounds and smells and the monorail with positive experiences, thus ensuring that our routines will always be that, routines and comfort and enrichment. Now, towards the back here, we have the second largest land mammal in the world. This is the greater one-horned rhino, also known as the Indian rhinoceros. We're going to speed up to get a better look at them, but this is a mother and son pair. They are critically endangered in the wild, 3,500 left. They have lost their numbers on a rapid pace. It's quite alarming how fast they're disappearing. And they are disappearing for a few reasons. The first reason is that they're hunted for their horn. They are killed, the whole animal's murdered just to have that one horn sold in the black market. The horn is made of the same material as your fingernails and your hair. They also lose their habitat to farm expansion and human encroachment. And lastly, they have such a hard time rebounding numbers because they have a 5-year reproductive turnaround. What does that mean? Well, when Priya, who I think is the larger one down center here, was pregnant with her son Patrick, she carried him in her belly for 16 months. This is the second largest land mammal pregnancy on the planet. Now, a rhino calf is usually born at 150 pounds and will stay by their mother anywhere between 2 to 3 years. At that point, the calf can go off on their own because they're big enough, and only then will the female be ready to have another calf. So a 5-year reproductive turnaround just to create one healthy adult rhino. That's why it's so hard for them to rebound their numbers, and we take this mission very seriously, because an animal like this is crucial to the environment it calls home. So since 1977, we have been able to breed 14 rhino calves here, doing this in collaboration with other zoos across the country to ensure we have genetic diversity. If we work with the shallow gene pool, we have a much higher likelihood of having a sickly calf born at the zoo, which is completely counterproductive to its mission. Now, if you guys want to learn more about Priya is featured on an episode of The Zoo on Animal Planet. I think the whole episode can be found on YouTube or on any of the streaming services that the Discovery Channel supports. It tells her story of how she acclimated not only to the new environment, the new meadow, the new keepers, but also the monorail. She actually is our most friendly rhino. Sometimes we get lucky enough, especially the guests, she walks right up and gives everyone a big old smell. Now this is the uplands. Within this meadow, we have 4 more deer species. Those 2 ones in the center of the meadow right now, these are the only 2 female Formosa Sika deer that we have. It's quite rare to have this species in in North America because they went extinct in their native habitat of Taiwan. Now the Taiwan and their government and the zoos there have been able to build up their captive bred numbers high enough to begin reintroducing them back into their native habitat. It's another success story, but that's also why it's very rare to have this species in a North American zoo. Now, around those Formosa Sika deer, you saw these shorter, heavier looking deer. These are the hog deer. They have adaptations similar to hogs. They duck and weave through the brush instead of dancing and prancing like you're seeing that brown antler deer doing. You see how beautifully fast and graceful she is? They're far more like the type of deer you would know from Jersey or upstate New York or even Staten Island. That's the white-tailed deer. So these brown antlered deer have a similar disposition, but they evolved 7,000 miles apart from each other. The last species of deer here, so we already mentioned 3. The 4th one are the sandbar. These are our females. These look like horses. They have a lighter coat. Look at that brown antler go. Look at that lady. The males are towards the back with the darker, thicker coat. Now, those guys stand 5 feet at the shoulder and weigh 650 pounds, which is a huge contrast to the Chinese tufted. We've already saw 2 of those little brown guys on the fence line here. They're only about 40 pounds at their biggest. We have about 5 or 6 in this enclosure, but they can be quite elusive. I do see one up on the ridge, and there's one more over here. If we were able to get a close look at the males, hey look, this is what you paid for, ladies and gentlemen. now that I'm not distracted by that, they have a really unique adaptation, especially the males. The males do not grow antlers. The only deer species that don't. Instead, they grow fangs. And they use them to compete with each other. They don't drink blood. It's a competition tool. Despite that, they still have the nickname the vampire deer. I can't imagine being like maybe hunter-gatherer era in China, running into this creepy crawly little deer with these glowing eyes at night and then having fangs. It's actually pretty scary to think about. This meadow is the home of the markhor. The markhor goat, I consider the goat of goats. This is why. You look at our males. See the horns on these guys. They spiral up to 5 feet long. The females only have horns that grow to about 10 inches. And they don't have as big or as majestic of a wizard beard as the males do. Seeing them in trees is actually not a rare sight because they actually have a 4-foot high jump and they don't need a running start. We might see a couple on tree stumps. It's quite amusing, but they're able to hold themselves in those very tight positions because they have a rubber-like sole at the bottom of their hoof. It works like how a mountain boot works. Helps them traverse these rock faces with relative ease. And they need to do that to get at harder reach vegetation in their native environment of the Himalayan mountains. But also in that same place, they are hunted by the snow leopard, who's an amazing climber themselves. Now, our last animal is certainly not our least, and always worth an extra few seconds to hang out with. These are our red pandas. We have our mother and her twin cubs here. We have one of the cubs on the floor, and these 2 are in the tree. Now, they're semi-arboreal, which means that they're both acclimated to the trees as well as the forest floor. They eat bamboo. That's the only thing they actually have in common with the panda bear. They actually were discovered before the panda bear, and they're actually related to the skunk, weasel, and the raccoon. These guys, I put money down that they sell more plushies here than any other animal at the zoo. And they walk that line. They have that broad, I call it the Pokemon appeal. Like, they're that coolness for the boys and the cuteness for the girls. Kids, I grew up in the 90s, man. I'm an old man now, so I remember the first 150. But they really do have that, like, beautiful kind of, they walk that line, that broad appeal for all people. They got great nicknames in other languages. In the Malayan tongue, they're known as the firefox. And in Mandarin, their name means little bear cat. Now, we do have more of them. On my lunch break, I got to go hang out with the other red pandas. We have one that's currently in the exhibit at the Himalayan Highlands. Once you leave Asia Plaza, walk up those steps, make a right, follow the road, and you'll find them in another bamboo forest next to the snow leopards. Now we are coming to the end of our tour. I will be making one momentary stop for my 70s era tech to restart. But in the meantime, while I make this brief stop, please remain seated. I'll draw your attention to the Bronx River. I'm a native-born New Yorker, so this is a pretty big change up to where I live and what I'm used to hearing and seeing. So within this river lives a myriad of indigenous creatures. You have migratory birds, waterfowl, and raptors. Not velociraptors. Raptor means bird of prey. So falcon, hawk, owl, etc. They like to eat the fish that live in this water. The big fish eat the small fish, and the small fish eat the bugs that hover above the water surface, or on the water surface. We also have reptiles and amphibians, frogs, salamanders, common snapping turtle, red-eared slider, garter snake, king snake, and then finally, we have small mammals. We see black and gray squirrels, chipmunks, gophers, raccoons, and opossum. Now, all of these animals make up the Bronx River's biodiversity, and all these species fill in niches within the ecosystem that helps keep the environment in balance. And preserving places like this is our mission. We are the Wildlife Conservation Society, a nonprofit, the WCS, that manages 5 parks across New York City, with an additional 300 sites in over 50 countries, where our eco guards and our field experts do their work. They stay on top of research and world events. Their niche helps me do my job. As your tour guide, I take their research and information and disseminate it back to the public. And the public, you guys, are the final niche. You guys complete a circle that helps protect wildlife. Because when you visit us, whether it's an annual visit or you're a member and are here all the time, you donate, you buy merchandise, etc., you're giving us the capital, financial backing, and the resources to perpetuate our mission. And we couldn't have done any of our success stories without you guys, without your support. You help us stand by wildlife. So we want to thank you for your patronage, and your visit today means the world to us and to our wildlife. I hope what you heard and saw today was inspiring. We are about to dock on platform. Just remain seated until the doors are open. My name is Steve. It was such a pleasure to be your tour guide today. Enjoy the rest of the park and have a great and safe rest of your day. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
Welcome that close. I can see it right here.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, thank you. Yeah.